Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dee Reinhardt with Illinois WorkNet, and on the call today we've got all the big brass. We've got Natasha Telger, we've got Olivia Grisham-Miller, we've got Tammy Stone, and me. I'm just a lowly person that runs these webinars. So if you have not already had a chance to check in by your organization, please do that. And if you have anything that you need to talk to us about today that we're not going to already talk about in the webinar, then please type that into the chat pod. But we've got a pretty robust agenda today. Olivia is going to pull up tests to demonstrate a couple of things because I'm on my laptop and I thought I was going to be able to make this work, and I can't without restarting my computer. So she's going to do that, and in the meantime, I'm going to pull up the dashboard numbers so that we can take a look at those. And then, Olivia, the other thing that I'm going to need open is probably the benchmark definitions as well.
Okay.
So it keeps popping in and out. I'm going to move you over to the side so that you can get that rolling while we're, all right. So I'm at an agency today, so they get to see the inner workings of this webinar stuff going on. So I think, Vaughn, you're pretty excited about this, right? All right. So we've got some agency numbers, and I worked on these last night and have already had a couple of phone calls with some people this morning and done some things with them. So these numbers are different than what I have on here, but I just wanted to let you know that we do have some stuff going on and that we do need some things taken care of here. So, Kara, you've got 3 enrollments required. Good news, there are no 2151s past due, so that's nice. And there are no 2151As past due. So, all right. Yay. So for enrollment required, Carrie, you've got 3 that need to be enrolled. I'm not quite sure if that is something that you're just waiting on some results to do that. Leslie Bates and Mantricon, you both have 1. Minimal progress, no progress, and situation worse. What I want to do is talk to you as a group about this. Now, I had a conversation with Catholic Charities this morning, so her 2 should be taken care of. But one of the things that we've got going on that I need you guys to really work with is if you have somebody that you're marking as minimal progress or no progress or situation worse, okay, Mary, you should be putting them, you should be sending them out a conciliation letter, uploading that letter. You should be marking a 2151A as in conciliation. So truly, we should only have people in one of these 3 areas for maybe a couple of days at most. And some of these numbers have been consistent. So if you guys can please follow those conciliation directions, I would really appreciate that. Completion status, that means that DHS marked somebody as ineligible, or the customer that you put in as employed has hit their 90 days and they need a completion status uploaded on that. So we've got a few of you guys that have that going on. Safe Haven, you got 3, Asian Human Services, a couple, Kara 1, Jane Addams a couple, Southland, Springfield Urban League, and Tri-County Urban League, you've got some numbers there. Similarly, we have SNAP ineligible, and that means that DHS has gone in and marked customers as ineligible, and you need to mark them as completed and get them out of the system unless they are SNAP ineligible because they have been hired and are completed with their 90 days. So if they are over income and ineligible, leave them the way they are because you already have them marked as completed, hired by an employer. Okay? Give me a show of hands if you understand what I just told you there. Yay. Okay. All right. If you've got any questions about that, please, please, please either call me or call Olivia so that we can get you squared away with that. Okay, I'm going to minimize this screen, and we're going to move on to benchmark definitions, report definitions. Now, we've just been working with a new benchmark, and you probably are all saying, unless I've been meeting with you the past couple days, you're probably all going, what? I don't understand. So this is just something that we're going to try and explain to you. And between Tammy and Olivia and I, we're all still confused too. So we'll try and get this squared away. So, in fact, I was just on the phone with Tammy, and we already found another area that we have to discuss tomorrow or the next day between the three of us. So, Olivia, since you got it up on your screen, do you want to give this a little chat here?
Yeah, you see it up on in the webinar?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're good.
So, yeah, so we put this document together, and it's available in the download file right under your guys' chat pod, so you guys can download it. And it goes through and it outlines all of the rows that are in the CBO Benchmark Report now that has been updated. And then it also explains here at the top in the actual report we have two counts. One is an unduplicated count and one is a duplicated count. The duplicated count is showing any customers that may have moved CBOs. So if you provided specific services to a customer and then they move to a new CBO, they will only show in the duplicated count column. They will not show in the unduplicated count column since they're no longer your customer. But then this document goes through and it outlines each of the rows that we have in the CBO Benchmark Report. And then it will give you a brief description of what we have in the info bubble. And then in the right column, it breaks down what the customer has to be marked as in order to be in that row on the dashboard. So if you go in there and you see that you have a customer who isn't showing there that you think should be showing there, you can use this report to come in and see, okay, so what do I need to have in order for my customer to show in this row? And so for the first row, the customer is marked as not enrolled on the progress page and marked with a SNAP eligibility status of eligible and ready for a re-engagement. So those are all of our not enrolled customers who are going through the re-engagement process. So if you want to know why they aren't showing there, it could be that they are marked as enrolled, which means they don't meet the criteria to fall in this row. Their eligibility status could have changed to SNAP ineligible, and if that's the case, they're not going to show in this row because they don't have the right eligibility status. And then we also identified the different rows in which the numbers will align to on the dashboard. So this first row there's a lot of dashboard rows because our re-engagement customers could be in a lot of places. But as you see, if you go further down the report, it becomes a little easier to identify where they should align on the different dashboards that we have between our enrolled and iStep. And so we have identified, so then you can go and look and see if there's any customers in a specific row on your enrolled dashboard that aren't showing in your CBO benchmark report. You can take a look at this document and just verify that, yes, they are supposed to align and something could be going on, making them not aligned that we need to address on our end. So if you notice anything like that, definitely send me or Dee an email letting us know what row you're looking at and what the issue is and what it should be. Dee, is there you want me to go in any more detail? Do you want me to go through this whole document or just a kind of summary?
I don't think you need to go, I don't think you have to go through the whole document, but we do want to point out those areas in blue that say counts in it will say where on that performance report that Tammy sent you is where that shows. So that particular line in the definition shows up on the assessed staff line on the benchmark, on the performance report. And then that line that she's highlighting right there counts in the enrolled training. Now there's a couple of them. Well, the enrolled training has 4 different lines that you have to check the numbers. So as I'm going to the different offices, I'm working with you to try to explain this benchmark report. So if you really don't understand, we can jump in a webinar and I'll show you firsthand, or we'll get together and I will show these things to you. There is one line that counts double. Can you scroll down to that one on where it counts as enrolled and counts as completed? So for example, I'm at Central State Fair today, and we discovered that we had to add 3 lines, or I'm sorry, we had to add 4 lines together to come up with the number of people that were enrolled in training, and then the last number counted as completed as well. So Eric, you had asked a question before. Is this answering your question? And you can download the benchmark report and find these definitions in that. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there's one more line that isn't reporting accurately. So we have to, well actually there's 2 lines that we've discovered in the past couple days. So this is going to be a fluid document for a little while. And Tammy is going to, Tammy, do you want to explain what it is that you're going to do in the next couple of days?
Yeah, I was hoping to do it today, but I got caught on apprenticeship program stuff. So, but hopefully tomorrow, what I do is I download the information. We had that other benchmark report that I was utilizing to do your performance document, your expenditure and performance document. So there's an export function on this now, so I'm going to export it and take those lines that we were discussing that should be showing up on the benchmark report, and I'm going to do a comparison of those with what the old benchmark report was. And the whole intent is to make sure that, you know, and what we're saying is what is actually going on in the field. So if there's any discrepancies, it could be, you know, something's not in the ISTAP. It could be that, you know, when we're doing this report that something's not counting right. So now that we have this new report, and the reason for this new report is to have further breakout and exposure of what's going on with customers. So no, I know our management wanted more details, so that's why this benchmark report changed, is we wanted those sub-details of what was going on with these customers. That's, like I said, that's my next step, is to verify this new benchmark report compared to the numbers we were running. And then we need to verify that with you based upon where you think you're actually at with your performance measures. And if we don't align for some reason, then the first thing we want to eliminate is that the report's counting, not counting correctly. We want to make sure the report's counting correctly. And then if we feel comfortable with that, then we need to take a look and say, okay, is there something that's missing in your ISTEP or in your progress page that hasn't been documented?
Okay. So now, Olivia, if you can, okay, so everybody look at the screen right now. You're seeing that there is a green line that's highlighted, and then there's a white line that says customers hired by employer but still in 90-day retention period. So, Olivia, can you please open, I guess I don't care, test, or we can go production if you want to, because we'll just do statewide numbers. And go to the actual benchmark report. So on this, can you make that just a little bit bigger, please? That's good. So on here it says there's show hide enrollment. If you click that, those lines that show up now when she showed them, those are the white lines on that benchmark report. And then if you go back and hide that, the lines that are exposed right now are just the green lines on the benchmark report. So that's how you can tell what the difference is. And so scroll down to, so where we were talking a little bit ago about 4 line items count for enrolled, where it says service delivery, those 4 lines that are showing right now are the lines that all count that you have to add together. So for example, we've got 18 that would be our total for enrolled in training, and we would have 11 as completed training. So does everybody get that? If you can, give me a show of hands. I'm coaching my people here. All right, good. Okie doke. So now, I think, does anybody have any questions? Christina, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll explain it to you tomorrow. Okay? I'm getting the miles on my car this week. All right, who else is typing?
And Eric, you said if I have a customer that receives training but has been enrolled in pre-employment services, they no longer show us enrolled in the training. Pre-employment services, but they have to have at least 4, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Olivia, they have to have 4 career planning services that are complete to show up in training as enrolled in training.
Yeah. Tammy just changed the enrollment to a training program that he received the training in.
Yeah, and if they're actually receiving training, yeah, just change that, because if it's not pre-employment, if they are actually receiving academic training or career planning training, you can just mark them as enrolled in training. So the thing to remember in this is the enrolled in training, and this is the way it's been forever. We haven't changed this. The enrolled in training is you have to have at least 4 career planning steps that are complete to be considered enrolled in training, and or you have to have an academic step that is started to be considered enrolled in training. But completed in training, it only counts those that have academic steps. That's somebody that's completed a training, so it's academic steps that are completed.
All right. If you guys call in to the number, you'll still be able to hear the call while you're restarting your computer. If they okay, so Jonathan's asking if they received academic training but dropped it, but are still receiving services from us, do we change to pre-employment services? Tammy?
Okay, let me read this. If they receive academic training,
They dropped out of their academic training, do you have to change them to pre-employment services?
no. So they were receiving academic training. So you had an they started academic training, so you would show that as being started. You just wouldn't show it as a completion, a successful completion. No, you don't have to change their status because they were originally enrolled in the training program. And like I said, as long as they started it, you would just show them as an unsuccessful exit on that training.
Okay,
and then they wouldn't get the completion on the training part of it.
Right. Eric is asking, why is there not a step for completed training but no placement into employment? I don't get your question. I think what you're saying is, why isn't there a step for getting placed into employment? Because that's on the progress page. The I-step is their training plan. The employment is tracked on either in worksite experience on the step, on the I-step, but permanent employment is only tracked on the progress page. And they're 2 separate benchmarks, but there isn't an option to move someone to completed status without employment. Yes, on the progress page you can mark somebody as completed or did not complete.
Yeah, you cannot complete a person successfully unless they were employed, they enlisted in the military, or they were enrolled into additional training. If they completed the program from any other reason, it's a did not complete, and it's because they lost their SNAP or were dropped from the program, they were incarcerated, or they moved. But those are not counted as completions because they did not end up completing the EPIC program. But if they completed their academic training, you will mark the academic step as complete, successful completion for that academic steps they completed, and you still will get credit for them completing their academic services.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. It's two different things. Completing an academic training program is marked within that step. Completion of the program and employment and their exit reason is marked on the progress page.
Right, and I think a lot of people are getting confused with this because the progress page, if they're completed with employment, which is the goal, if they're completed with employment, that's on the progress page, but you still have to mark them as complete in the I-STEP, and the benchmark pulls from both of those places.
So does that make sense, Eric? For the customers who complete training, you're going to complete their training step because that's a service. And all the services you're providing are on their I-STEP, where when they've completed the actual whole EPIC program, they're no longer participating with you for one of various reasons. You're completing them on their progress page in the completion information section.
And so for the numbers here, this is where the hired by employer is being pulled from for the benchmark report. So the hired by employer number is coming from the progress page.
If they complete training, Eric just typed in, so if they complete training I-STEPs, the person is listed as completed training in the benchmark and on the performance report. But then you go to the completed for them to track into employed and retained. Does that, Eric, do we need to do a one-on-one with you?
Yeah, so if they just completed training in their I-STEP, they're only going to meet the first 3 of the 5 benchmarks you listed. They're not going to meet the employed or retained until you update their progress page with their completion information section, and they won't meet the retained until the retention step is added and successfully completed.
Okay, so what I want everybody to do before we spend a whole lot of time trying to explain this in 25 different ways, I want everybody to download that benchmark report and read the definitions in each of those sections, and then look at your customers that don't look like they're reporting in the right place and see if each of those parameters have been met. Then if you're having problems, and I dropped my G, and then if you're having problems, call either me or Olivia, and we'll look at the customers with you and have the benchmark definitions open and take a look to see what is right or wrong. Okay? Can I get a promise from everybody on that one?
Hey, and Dee, to address Eric's concern too, and I think this is what we were talking about earlier, for the completion, and this is something we need to, Olivia and Dee and I need to sit down with, for the completion of training, and this is completion of an academic training program that's counting, even if they're, there's 2 different things on the benchmark report. One is completion of academic training and marked as complete on the program, and another one is completion of academic training but marked as still in progress on the program. So I think, and one of the things that we need to look at is both of those need to be added up for the completion. So on this particular report, we just said something about the completion was those that were marked as complete for the program, and those were complete in academic. But I think what we're going to have to do is add that number above that, which shows completing the academic portion but still in progress. Because they could have completed your training program, but they're still in progress because you're working with, getting them a job. So those two numbers, and we got to verify that. Like I said, I'm running these numbers again, but those two numbers should be added up to come up with the total individuals that have completed training.
So Eric just said what is confusing everybody, and that this is what Tammy's going to do, but the benchmark report and the performance, achievement, and expenditure reconciliation will not match right now because Tammy ran those numbers in January 16th, I believe. And those numbers are now almost 6 weeks old, so there's going to have been some people that should have changed between then and now. And that's what I was showing you. Olivia, can you go back to the definitions?
And the thing I'm checking for is the numbers should be the same or greater than that report. If any of these numbers are dropping, then there's a problem with the way the report's counting or how we're counting the numbers. So we're checking to make sure that they're the same or greater. And then once we feel comfortable with that report, then we want you to verify it too and look at it and make sure that, that it, cuts the mustard with what your numbers are also. We've done this with one agency, and it came pretty darn close. So we need to, like I said, we need to do it across all of you guys.
So those blue, that's what I was saying earlier, Eric, is the places where it says blue, count in, enrolled in training, that's your crosswalk. That's what, Eric, that's what I just said. Tammy is going to do that, but hasn't had time to get it done yet. So she will get that done and out to you in the next, I'm going to give her 2 weeks to get it done. And it may be longer.
Oh, it'll be before that. Trust me. We need to have this done before because we'll get to this next session, but it'll get done. And I will actually, once we feel good with these numbers based upon our review, then I will be sending you out a new benchmark report based upon this that we're going to take a look at and verify because we're going to need this for the next conversation that's coming up here soon.
And everybody that I'm talking to, like yesterday, today, tomorrow, and Monday, I've got 2 more agencies that I'm seeing in the next couple days. I'm getting where they're supposed to be so that I can check how these numbers are flowing. So we will get this fixed, and we hopefully will have everybody. So if you see something that's out of whack, look at the definitions first, make sure that your people are marked appropriately, and then if it's not right, you need to copy me and Olivia on the email, and then we will verify what's going on. Okay? Give me a show of hands here. Okay. All right. The definitions report is in the file pod below the chat pod, Bill. It says benchmark report definitions. And we've also uploaded it to the EPIC Partner Resources page. Okay. So now,
just to clarify, this is somewhat of a draft. It could change based upon what we find when we run the numbers. So like an example is that I think that we're going to have to add that completion but still in progress with the benchmark, as that's part of the thing that's going to be added with the completions.
All right. Olivia, are you showing us anything about the worksite placement updates, or is that just something that you're going to verbalize?
That is Natasha.
Yep.
Oh, Natasha.
So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So we are in the process of making updates to Worksite Placement. They're not out there yet. They'll be out there next week. But I wanted to make sure, since we have everyone together, that we could show you some of these updates real quick. And then, once next roll around for the webinar, CBO webinar, we can go over it in more depth and answer any of your questions. So the display looks pretty much the same. They'll have, your project. These are the examples I have right now. This is a global change, so it'll happen across all programs in Illinois WorkNet, which also impacts EPIC. So you'll have your project information, and then you can add an employer worksite. That's the same thing as before. We modified it a little bit so that it's a little bit, I hope it's a little bit more user-friendly. So the area that you're on, if it's blue, you'll see that that's the area that you're currently working on. So you can add an employer like you could before, or you can select from a list. You can select from the list. You see that that is marked as green. And then you'll have selecting a work site. So if you wanted to select the work site, you can select it from the list, or you can add a work site. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the work site because it's pretty much the same process. And then that changes, and you can see we have the worksite placement area that's available, and you enter the information. So this part of it isn't all that different. It's just that we tried to make everything more visible. One of the other features is if you have a worksite, you can select the box to say use the same employer information. And so we just tried to streamline that a little bit more. Now when we're looking back on this page, this is your overview page of work sites and employers and job placements for your organization. You can see, this is still the same. We still have add customers, we still have employer, worksite, job, advertisements. The one thing we did add was the ability for, this used to be not a hyperlink, and so we added it so that you can now, let's say you want to change the number of openings for your job. Before you had to know that you had to have to update the job. Now these two links go to the same place. So if you're looking and you want to update the total number of openings, just click on the link. You can update the information. Now the big change is it relates to when you add a customer. So if I pick add a customer, I'm going to select from my list, and it's going to tell me my job title. It's going to tell me the description. It's going to tell me what type of employment type this is. So in your case, it would be work experience. So you see work experience. And then it'll have the other person's name. And we added minimum wage. Now, if we need this for another program, but we, as a global tool, it's going to be just required to enter the minimum wage. You can put, for EPIC, it's not critical on what that number is. But again, it's a global tool. It'll be across the board, so minimum wage will be required. And then we have our hourly wage. So for anything that's not permanent employment, you can just enter 0 for an hourly wage, if that's the case. In EPIC, of course, you have worksite placement and money to be used for worksite placement. So let's just say it's $8 for that hourly wage. Then what we have here is the wages are going to be what we call subsidized wage, or wages that are paid through the training program. And so you'll want to just make sure your hourly wage and the subsidized wage are the same piece. We will add, we did have text on here, I'll make sure it's added in there again, to say that the subsidized wage is basically the same as the wages that are being paid for by the program, as opposed to unsubsidized wages would be the employer's piece of it. So it'll say unsubsidized or employer's portion. If you
Natasha, in most cases, it's going to be the agency itself doing the worksite payment, right? So it's what they're paying the employee.
But it's still being funded through Epic.
Correct, correct.
So you just have to make sure that the subsidized wage, because it's not like permanent placement, it's not as though the employer's paying their part of it. The employer doesn't have to pay anything for them to work there, right?
Correct, correct.
So, so if you have this as 0, it'll automatically say that the employer is paying $8, whereas, you know, really, if in this case it'd be the Epic program is paying the $8. And like I said, this is just a text change. I just noticed that we need to add that text in there that says, you know, this is being paid for by the program, and this part of it is being paid for by the employer. Other than that, that's it. That's the main change. Is whenever you add a person, you just need to put in the minimum wage and their hourly wage. And for Epic, I assume, and Tammy, you can tell me if there's any exceptions to this that you know of, but the hourly wage and the subsidized wage would be the same thing.
That should be correct, yeah. I mean, there could be exceptions, I guess, in some cases, but I think probably for all of our Epic, it's going to be subsidized. And the minimum wage is going to be the minimum wage, obviously, in your area. Because with any programs, I mean, and with Epic, it has to be either minimum wage, no less than minimum wage or prevailing wage for that specific occupation or that specific work experience. So, and this is a nice feature. Like I said, this is being developed for other things outside of Epic, but it's a nice feature because you know, especially with the subsidized and unsubsidized, as we move forward with other types of projects, it's important stuff to know.
Okay. And then you'll receive updated instructions. Those will be coming out, and then we'll send out a notice when everything is out there and made available to everyone. And that's all I have for the worksite placement.
And Bill, these you probably typing this in, but if you look right behind or below the chat pod, it says CBO TA files, and right under the name it says Benchmark Report. That's the report. If you click on that, you can download that. She just pulled it up there. So what you would need to do is actually click on that report, and then it's going to let you download the file.
So if you click on the file name, then the option will say download file, and you just hit that. It will take you to a new screen, so you'll have to come back to the webinar. Or you can go to the Epic Partner Resources and download it from that page.
And I would recommend those other documents. Dee spent a lot of time working on the case notes and the case note rubric that we used for another program also. To download those and take a look at those.
Yeah, I did a damn fine job on those.
Yeah, she did. She spent a lot of time on those. That's going to see a lot more of that type of a process when it comes to a rubric. So we identify what's not going to fly at all and what meets the standards and then what's above standards.
And then, so there's a PowerPoint and a rubric, so you need both of those because they kind of go together. And I couldn't have done that without Natasha, so she and I are partners in crime now on these rubrics. All right, Tammy, you're up with the new cohort.
Okay. Never say never. I've learned in DHS. It takes many different turns and twists, and you think you're going one way, and then all of a sudden you're going another, which is not a bad thing. You know, we were kind of hoping that we could do and it's a new cohort. I'm not sure what the name is of this, but we were, you know, back last year there was conversations around that that whole possibility. But DHS did have a meeting with FNS on the 16th to discuss, because we do have quite a bit of money left over. And so the conversation was expenditures and how we can continue to do some work with what we've got. So another cohort is been approved. We're working through the planning process right now with DHS. Deidre actually did send me a timeline. So we're going to be looking at this timeline this week and next week. We will have more information out to you as soon as possible, but we have to kind of get all of our ducks in a row, and we have to provide information back to FNS on this whole process. So what we're going to be doing, what I'm going to be doing with you guys is I promised a budget modification in February. Well, that whole composition has changed because it was going to be based upon ending the grants in June. And this is choice, too. I mean, if for some reason you guys decide that you don't want to continue on, I mean, we can't make you continue on with the grant. But what we would like to see is these grants will be modified to the end of February, even possibly March, because we did get an extension from FNS on that, and we're talking 2019. With that, the customers will not have to go through random assignment. Customers can be recruited by the CBOs, and that's the front end is what we're working on right now and what that looks like. There's going to have to be some system changes. Hopefully, we're trying to keep it as minimal as possible, but we're working on methods that you guys can do the recruitment of these customers. You can even do eligibility, and we're vetting that out now with DHS too, but if you go into like the My Case, and if you work with a customer, if they sign an affidavit and you go into their case, you can look at eligibility right then when they're there with you. Otherwise, it would be like a kind of that invite process where we would send a note to DHS and say, well, I have this customer and I need to verify eligibility. So, and DHS is still going to be doing on their side, reviewing customers. They're going to be doing their family assessment, and they're going to be evaluating customers that they think are good fits for the providers, and then sending them to, they're not doing the whole front orientation. That's going to be removed. But they're going to do more of a leaner process for moving customers to the CBOs, and then we're probably going to look at a leaner process too if they come to a CBO and you guys look at them and assess them. You don't have to take them. I mean, that's one thing. With the original group, you got what you got and you had to serve them. In this particular case, if they come to you, you don't have to serve them if they're not a good fit for your program. But what we need to figure out is, okay, can we put them somewhere else that's a better fit and they can be served? Or if there's, if there's some significant issues that were potentially overlooked and maybe EPIC isn't good for them at all, then we can decline, not really decline to serve them, but we can send them back to DHS and say, okay, this is, maybe it's an ABOD that has some, medical exemption that hasn't been identified, that they're physically incapable to do some, whatever it is. We can send them back to DHS and say, okay, this may have to look at an exemption for this person, and we're not serving, this person in this particular program. So there is a lot more latitude on you guys' side with this. This has been a very difficult program as being a performance-based program also, because you guys have not controlled your front end or the production of it. So now we have that opportunity to control that to some degree. So what we're going to have to do is relook at your budgets and relook at your performance matrix that's in your grant agreements. And we actually just did that in January. We modified that. So that performance matrix, we're going to have to revisit that. We can discuss average cost per, and if the average cost per, I know there's some agencies that had a very low average cost per, and getting into this program, we realize it's a lot heavier lift, than we anticipated. So we can take a look at that. The bottom line is what we're going to be looking at is the average cost for enrollment and the average cost for employment. And when we start looking at average cost for employment, and if we're getting like really excessive average costs for employments, then that's a concern. And that would be a concern for me and for DHS, and also a concern for FNS, because there's got to be a good return on investment on this. And what that good return on investment is based on employment, I'm not really going to dictate that, but there's got to be something that says, okay, this is a good program, and it makes sense to that this was a good model, that we need to look at ways of doing this, compared to saying that this was a very expensive program to get people employed, and this is something that would is not something that we would want to continue on. So when we're looking at this, and I'm telling you guys, when you're looking at this, you want to look at your costs based upon what you're bringing in, and also your costs for people that are actually getting employed, and ask yourself, was this something that is good? Is this something that I would want to fund based upon these costs, and that's a relatively good return on investment. So with that said, so you're going to we're vetting this stuff out still with DHS and coming up with the processes. It has to be sooner than later. What I recommend for you guys is to start thinking about your intake process and how you can bring customers in that qualify, that are SNAP eligible. ABODs is our targeted population once again, so we have latitude of serving 15% of the individuals that are non-work registrants, but ABODs is our primary target. But if you have somebody like in that are ABODs and exempt, that's fine. Or an example would be if it's somebody, a woman or a man with a child, but they're not on TANF, then that could still potentially qualify. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Yes.
Andy Dryluck is asking, can they co-enroll with SNAP to Success? And I think the answer to that is no.
Well, the SNAP to Success is in this area anyway. So I think, Andy, what you guys are doing is in a different county, which is not an Epic County, if you're involved with the SNAP to Success. And SNAP to Success, there's only a few programs right now. They're piloting that. And just for you guys' information as a collective group, that is potentially what could be sustainability for Epic down the road. With SNAP to Success, though, there has to be a match. There has to be financing that is coming in that is non-federal money that can be matched. But it could be a good resource down the road for some of our providers that have a lot of money that is brought in even from the state or from foundations, and you're doing this work with these customers. It could be a matching opportunity down the road.
Okay, and then Autumn asked the question, and I'm pretty sure that the answer is, but we have to verify definitely once we go into place with this. If the customer comes after we start this next cohort, are their food stamps going to be in jeopardy if they don't follow through on the appointments? And I believe that is their choice, but it's still the same thing. If they don't participate, they get sanctioned, right?
Correct. The process, really the process is going to be the same once we get them to you guys. It's the eligibility and getting them to you guys that's going to be different. So once if they're enrolled with you, well, an example is if DHS would send somebody to you and they're going to schedule an appointment with you, the same type of a thing. If they don't show up, then you'll do the 2151 as a no-show, and then they're back on DHS. So that whole that will stay probably the same. The difference is like with you doing the recruiting, I would anticipate since they're there with you, they're not going to be they're not a no-show. So we're working out processes of that 2151 and how that is done, and it may be that you generate that and send it to DHS and saying that this customer, whatever boxes you fill out with that to get them started with your program. So the 2151, 2151A, all of that will still exist and pretty much run the same way. The staffing will still exist with these customers. We will be able to code them differently so we can, know who's in this cohort compared to maybe the other cohorts. And we're talking about doing it similar to a date function with these customers. So it's just the front side. And then we had a question on how many. And you have to work with your fiscal people on this too, because in your grant agreement, when you guys put these applications together originally, we planned on serving service delivery, training 2,800 people. Well, we had at least about 28 to 30% never showed up to you guys to begin with. So we lost all of those customers to begin with. And then when they showed up to you, we have a fallout from that too. So I'm not sure exactly what that number is right now, but it's probably another 20 to 30% that's fallen out once they came to you guys and maybe never got into training. So there has been, and it should have been anticipated. There's been a pretty good fallout based upon these customers who actually are getting services. So, but what I'm getting to is in your grant agreement, in the budget area, you identified what you wanted, your total budget, and what we did was we put 50% of that out because we didn't know where the customers were going. So I think we only had 2 agencies that had enough customer flow that we increased them to the 100% of their budget. But what I recommend that you do is you look at that, that's the number that you need to start with, and identify, if we got the rest of our money, You know, we maybe can or can't expend it. We have some agencies. An example would be, you know, if you came in at saying I'm going to enroll 100 customers and, you know, maybe 80 of them are going to be complete or whatever that ratio is going down. But if you said 100 customers and you said $100,000 and we gave you 50,000, I'm just throwing that out. Well, you ended up getting maybe 8 customers from DHS. And so obviously your expenditure ratio is considerably lower because you only had 8 customers. So from now until February of next year, is it realistic that you can serve those extra, 88 customers? Or is it more realistic that we can probably serve maybe about 50 or 60? And then what does the budget look like based upon that? Okay, is what we need to know from you guys. And then the other thing, we do have, we're putting in a request, and we're going to plan our budgets based upon this. If we have to adjust it, we will. I'm relatively confident. I think FNS will approve it, but we're putting in an adjustment to increase our admin to 10% in the budget line items, and career navigation 40%. So you cannot exceed 40% on career navigation or 10% on admin. And then the 50% we want to group into just direct client services. So that way if you need more money in training, it needs to be for training, participant wages, and supportive services. But then you can control that ratio based upon what your program design is. And then one other thing I want to say is paid work experience is a huge benefit in this grant because it doesn't go against their income. They don't lose SNAP benefits because of that. And it's really been underutilized. And so, you know, paid work experience is something that we really, really want to promote with this particular grant. So any questions on any of that?
I've been answering some in the chat, Todd.
Okay.
Andrea wants to know when we're going to start recruiting, and we have to wait until the system, till we've got some updates done in the Epic system for you to be able to do the reverse invite. Until that point in time, if you've got anybody who is they're telling you that they're SNAP eligible, you can send the reverse referral or call or email the primary contact from that office and have them check to see if they are eligible and then ask them to do the invite for you. But their system isn't really working properly for the invites yet either. So give us a few weeks and we will get this rolling. But if you've got people that are interested, please, by all means, get down their name and their contact information, and we will work on this as rapidly as we possibly can.
It has to be sooner than later. I think we're looking at, I know DHS just sent their date, their timeline. So, I mean, we're looking at, no later than April 1st for doing this. I mean, we'd love to get it started before that, but there is a lot of system stuff that goes behind this, and then we have to work out all of our processes, and then we have to present it to FNS also. And the other side of this, too, is what we have to provide them is based upon this information, we need to let them know how much money we still think we're not going to spend, and that money has to be returned to FNS by the end of March. So there's a lot of moving parts right now, and everything needs to be, expedited, so that we can get this rolling and get customers in.
And then Autumn asked, give me an example of how I would refer my WIOLA customer. You have to ask them, are you an eligible food stamp recipient? And if they say no, then you can't refer them. If they say yes, then it has to be verified. And that's fine. And then they have to have not been randomized before, and you don't know whether they were because you guys don't know who was in the control group.
And
so
Autumn,
to
respond to that.
I've got a couple of providers here in Chicago that provide both to SNAP, ENT, and to Epic, and they don't know who the control group is from the SNAP ENT people.
And the thing with this, too, is that the system's going to do a check because we cannot serve anybody that's in the control group. So we can't touch the treatment group because they're already in, and we can't touch the control group because they're being studied. So it has to be new participants that has not been randomly assigned in the EPIC program that's doing this. And if I'm getting your question right, if we have WIOA customers, they have to be eligible food stamp recipients, period. This is true, Dee, but the thing is that they, in WIOA, eligibility is based on the time of when they apply. They could have lost their food stamps afterwards and still be eligible for WIOA. They can still stay in WIOA services. But with SNAP, if they lose their SNAP benefits at any time, then you have to stop services to them.
Right, but she was asking about the reverse referral process. I'm almost positive. That's how I interpreted the question.
Yeah, and you know the big thing, and we need to, and I know that we had this webinar, and they talked mainly on the IES side of it. The big thing is manage my case. If we can get you guys trained in that, and you guys can utilize that, so that'll be a priority, and that might even be the next webinar that we do, is to explain how you can get into Manage My Case and verify eligibility for those customers. The customer has to be there with you, and they have to sign a waiver saying that you can work with them on that. But then you can just print it out right from Manage My Case and then put it in your customer files. And then once we get them in the system, then that's a way that DHS is still doing checks on these customers and making sure that they're still eligible. So I anticipate they'll still do that, but then you can also get into the Manage My Case every now and then, check eligibility.
Okay, so I don't think we have anything else on the agenda. Nope, we don't. Okay, so you can't check if, we can check to see if somebody was in the control group. Olivia and I can check to see. But DHS should be able to check to see if somebody was in the control group or not. If they've got a case that is dated from 2016 to now, you can pretty much bet they were randomized. If it's a brand new case, they probably weren't. If it's a brand new case since November of 2017, Tammy? Is that when we stopped, when we hit the 5,000?
I believe so, and I think it's my understanding, and Olivia, correct me if I'm wrong, when you guys are entering like their names and a social security number, it should come up and say that this customer is already in the system. So regardless if they're not in your caseload, it'll check all 5,000 whatever, and see if that customer's in the system. And if that customer's in the system, then they can't be put in this cohort.
Brad's ready to go.
We do have people ready, and I'm glad. And like I said, the thing is, start identifying customers. Your customers, start thinking about your intake process of this, and then, like I said, once we get the rest of the details worked out with DHS and FNS, and the system is part of it, and getting it ready for rolling, then we need to roll this out and be ready.
All right. All right, we're coming up on 4 o'clock, and we need to wrap this up. So Stacy's saying, so if we verify via Manage My Case that the client is eligible, can we then do a reverse referral request EPIC approval? Yes, but not until we have the system in place in EPIC for you to do that. So that's what Tammy was saying about the April 1st timeline. We want to have this done by then, but we have to let you know that we have it ready to go.
And Stacy, just to tag on to that, we're getting rid of that whole reverse referral language, and that didn't work. So what it is the customer is sitting there with you, and you can get into Manage My Case, and they're eligible based upon that criteria that's in Manage My Case. Then you can start serving them. If we can't do the Manage My Case, we're going to have to send a request to DHS and say, this is the customer that we want to enroll in the program. Are they eligible, yes or no? So it's not, the customer does, it's my understanding from what we've been talking about for the protocol, the customer does not have to go to the DHS office. They may have to come back to you. You may have to say, I need to verify your eligibility. Can you come back? And we talked about a 24 to 48-hour time period. So you may have to say, can you come back in 2 days? Or you communicate with them, say, okay, I'll get a hold of you, on a specific, in 2 days and let you know if you're going to be eligible for this program. So the whole reverse referral language is being removed from this cohort. It's either that you are able to determine that they're eligible and enroll them, or if you can't determine, you ask DHS, and if they say yes, then you communicate and get them enrolled, or DHS is going to be sending them to you.
All right, and we're going to include a link in the minutes, Olivia, that will link you to the webinar that we did and the paperwork that you need to submit to be able to do the Manage My Case. And I know that I talked to one agency after that webinar that when we were still going to be closing out everything, I said, okay, well, it's probably not important for you because you're probably not going to get any new cases and blah, blah, blah. So now everybody has to revisit that paperwork. So,
and Dee, just to clarify, that paperwork is to get you access to their IES system. So that's being able to actually access the DHS eligibility system. The Manage My Case system is on the client level. So that paper, you don't have to have that paperwork completed to access the Manage My Case system. You just have to have a signature, a waiver signed by the customer saying that they approve you to get into their case.
And then you would go in through the customer's portal.
And so the customer, or the customer, if the customer is sitting there and they know how to get into Manage My Case, that you could just say, hey, get into get into your case and print out the documentation that you're eligible. So if the customer, knows how to get into that, and once again, DHS has said Manage My Case. It's relatively new, so there's some quirks, and not everybody's able to get into it. So it's it's kind of a hit and miss on that right now too. If if the customer can get in, have them get in and print out the documentation. If they let you get in and print out the documentation. Otherwise, we have to ask DHS.
All right. So Aurelie just corrected, the last person randomized was in September, so anybody with a new DHS case from October 2017 could potentially be part of this new cohort. All right. If you have any other questions, please email Olivia, myself, or the EPIC at IllinoisWorkNet.com. Check the case notes stuff out and check out the webinar that happened in January. We'll include that in the minutes. And everybody have a great rest of your day.